Welcome to Learning Unlocked. I am your host, Britt Bingold. As an instructional specialist in Gilbert, Arizona, I am a total nerd when it comes to classroom strategies and educational pedagogy. Educators are the key holders to unlocking learning for students. Today, as always, my goal is to provide you with resources and tools, the keys, to enable and accelerate learning for all students. Thanks for joining me today. Let's get started. Before we get going on the interview today, I just wanted to do a quick reminder that if you have time to rate us and write us a review on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate it. The more reviews and ratings we get, the more educators will see our podcast. So if you like what you're hearing and you think others would too, please head over and provide us a review. Thanks. Hey key holders, and Happy New Year. It is 2021 and we are back for season 2 of Learning Unlocked. Today we are doing episode 13 with a very special guest I'm so excited about, Miss Heidi Martin, and she is the executive board member, one of the executive board members for Whole Brain Teaching, which is just this grassroots education organization started by Chris Biffle. And everything that they have on their website, wholebrainteaching.com, is free. And honestly, it's a passion of mine. I've seen it transform kids and transform teachers and classrooms. And really, it doesn't take a whole lot to just add it in and modify a little bit of your normal classroom routine and just to see big results for student learning. So there's lots of different strategies in whole brain teaching, but today Heidi and I are just going to dip our toes in a little bit to the basics of whole brain teaching, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. And if you're looking for a fresh way to start second semester with your students, either whether you're virtual or face-to-face, or if we're in hybrid, I think this is a great way to, slowly work in some new engagement and participation strategies. So please enjoy my interview with Heidi Martin. Hi, Heidi. How are you today?
Hi, Brittany. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. But the last few days have been just like rough days, like just things have popped up that I just wasn't anticipating. And so I had like really been stress eating like my favorite food, which should not be in my house, which is those like donuts, like powdered sugar. Like I was like full of powdered sugar. I ate like a whole bag yesterday. It was really bad.
Oh no.
So bad.
Oh no.
I know. So I was going to ask you if you have like a stress food or like a comfort food, like what would that be for you? Like when you're just like, I can't handle anymore. Like what would you go and grab?
So I, these days, grab anything and everything. But one thing that I always go to because I think it's healthy is sugar-free Cool Whip. So I'll have a tub of sugar-free Cool Whip in the freezer and, it's sugar-free. I can eat as much as I want. But really, I mean, how healthy can that possibly be? So that's like my go-to. I think I'm being healthy, but in reality, I'm really not.
Maybe if you threw some strawberries in there or something, like
Yeah, then I can really call it healthy, right?
then you could be like, it's healthy. There's strawberries and this huge tub of sugar-free Cool Whip, and it's fine. I love that. That's awesome.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, before we start talking about whole brain teaching, can you just give me a short little bio for our listeners so they know a little bit more about you and your education experience and things like that?
Sure. So my name is Heidi Martin. I am in my 9th year of teaching first grade. I actually found whole brain teaching in my 2nd year of teaching. Most people have a really bad first year of teaching, but for me, it was my 2nd year. It was all fun and sunshine and rainbows until my 2nd year. And my school that I was working in actually was identified as a priority school In the first 3 months of school, I had 36 first graders, and
Woo.
26 of the 36 were boys. And so I had 26 boys alone and 10 girls. I know. And then our school day was extended. So we had to go to school for 8.5 hours a day. Um, we had a new admin. There was so many factors that went into this year. And I really thought that I was, pretty good at classroom management and whatever else. Um, Quickly learned that I wasn't that good. And I was going home every night Googling, like, oh my gosh, classroom management, whatever. And I found Whole Brain Teaching for Challenging Kids. It was like $8 or something like that on Amazon. So I ordered it. I thought, what do I have to lose? And it literally changed every single student in my classroom, and it just changed my life. So here I am today.
That's awesome. And so you said your school became a priority school. What does that mean?
So, for those who don't know, if you are identified as a priority school, it means that the state, or actually, it means that at the federal level, you have been identified as a failing school, and they give you 4 years to turn your school around. And I'm doing air quotations right now. You can't see me. To turn your school around, they spend tons of money bringing in consultants and whatever else. And so you're like a focus by actually like at a federal level, um, to either get your school in gear or they're shutting you down. And actually, the school is actually now shut down.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So are you at a new place then?
Yes, I am at. I moved to a new school. I actually, before they shut it down, I moved to a new school. I just couldn't do those long hours. I had a baby and eight and a
Yeah.
half hours with the kids. And then, we were getting pulled out a lot for professional development and whatever else. They wanted us to write a whole curriculum. It was a mess. It was a wild time, but at the end of it, I got whole brain teaching out of it. So I really feel like all of those factors came together for a reason to really bring me to whole brain teaching. So at the end of the day, I'm thankful.
Yeah, I'm 36, first grade. First of all, I
Wow.
laughed when you said boys because I have a daughter and then I have a son. And so I
Mhm.
like they're just very different and I can't and my daughter is in second grade and my son is 4. So I totally I couldn't even imagine having 36 first graders. I had 38 juniors one time and it was like full grown bearded
Oh,
children. Like it was just too like so I can't imagine having that many littles that just want your undivided attention and want to tell you all about whatever they found in their pocket at like lunch. Like
well, and the thing about this group is, well, for one, and no, we did not have a classroom that fit 36 kids. So, I mean, we had kids just sitting in chairs around the outside of the room. I mean, to do whatever we could. There was two first grades. We both had 36.
oh
And
my gosh.
when I talk about the boys, I talk about them because, like you said, there is a difference most of the time, but also like these were some of the most angry 6-year-old boys I've ever seen and had to this day. And I mean, many times we were evacuating the classroom. We had broken lights, broken windows, chairs, and tables thrown around. It was very dangerous, I'll just say, with very little support from, you know, anyone really. So I really felt like I had to do something. And so when I say whole brain teaching really changed my life, it really did, because those same boys that were fighting and having us all evacuate the room and getting suspended day after day, ended that school year teaching the class, like
I
teaching the
love
class.
it because of whole brain teaching. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yes, there's no other explanation for it than whole brain teaching. So I mean, it transformed every single kid that's ever walked into my classroom since then. And I love to give that background just so people understand, because a lot of times, we'll hear the questions, what about the kid who, or what about the kid who? And I'm like, I've had all of those kids. I promise you, it works.
You're like, I've had kids, I've had chairs thrown at things. I've had, oh wow. So it really does um, help all kids, right? I mean, it really from your best student who knows how to play the game of school, right, to the student who just is like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here and very angry and maybe just really has a hard time with the educational system.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. Wow, that's quite the background. And your second year. I mean, my first and second and third year teaching, I was like, yeah, I'm super great. And then my fourth year, I moved school districts and quickly realized I was not. Like I was thrown into teachers that just had it together, and I thought I had it together. And
Yeah.
so, which was a good, so like you said, those experiences when you do get thrown into something or you have to go search out better strategies or different things, it happens for a reason and it makes us better teachers. So
Definitely.
okay, so let's talk about whole brain teaching. So for our listeners that have no idea what we're talking about, because you and I both know what it is,
Right.
I've used it with my secondary high school English kids. I used it for about 2 years before I got sick and wasn't not able to be in the classroom anymore. Can you give our listeners kind of like, okay, whole brain teaching is this, and it's not that, because I want to clarify any misconceptions that they might have about whole brain teaching itself.
Sure. So I'm going to start with what whole brain teaching is not,
Okay.
because I'm sure people have probably, assumed this or heard this before. So, number one, we're not a business. We are a grassroots movement. All of us on the executive board and staff do what we do for free because we believe in it. We're all working teachers. And we do this, like I said, for free because we believe in it and everything. We make everything available for free because we know the life of teachers. So Coach has a mission. Coach B, Chris Biffle, the founder of Whole Brain Teaching, just has a mission to reach all teachers and reach all students and really just make a difference. So we are not a business, and Whole Brain Teaching is also not chanting. A lot of times I'll see people write, oh, here's a chant, or here's, a song or a chant for this or that. And that is not what whole brain teaching is. We're also not a robotic repetition of what the teacher is saying. So the kids are not robotically just repeating us all day long. Um, and then we're also not a curriculum. So we are a set of strategies that work with any curriculum that you have. And
That's what I love about it. I
yes,
love that you could take it and layer it on anything.
on anything. In my 9 years of teaching, which I consider kind of short, um, I guess maybe it's kind of been teaching for a long time, but not really.
That is, you're making it. I only made it 12. So, I mean,
Yeah,
now I'm doing this, but I had 12. So,
yeah, and people have been teaching for a lot longer, and I'm sure they've
yeah,
seen so
30
much
or
more,
whatever, those people.
right? But in my short 9 years, I've had, I don't know, like 4 curriculums and um, 9 different principals. So, I mean, I've seen a lot. And, with a principal comes different expectations and different things. So, and I've been able to use whole brain teaching with all of those different things. So, we are a set of strategies that can be used with any curriculum. We also promote solidarity and unity. That's like one of our big things right now is to really to push, your classroom to be a classroom of solidarity and unity with all kids working together and focusing on character education, and really putting our students first to where we teach them to be teachers and then we become the facilitators.
I love that. Yeah. And it really and it's not chanting. I feel like anytime I talk to teachers about it, or every once in a while, if I lose my teachers, I'll say mirror words and they're looking at me like, what? And I'm like, because I'm just like, you need to listen to what I'm saying. And it's something that can be applied on top of anything. But they're like, well, I couldn't do that all day. I couldn't, and I'm like, you're not doing it all day. You're training your kids up. And then eventually they just do it, And so yeah, and I just wanted to make that clear for teachers in our district too, because I think there's a huge interest in Gilbert, or for Gilbert Public Schools with it. But I think a lot of teachers are like, I don't want to chance all day, and I don't want to be a robot. Like all those things you listed are so perfect, because I feel like it does sometimes, like that's the naysayers of what it is not. And I like that it focuses on character building. Like we need that, and we need teacher with students to feel confident in their learning, and we know that when they do better.
Right. And I think we'll get into it a little bit later in the podcast, but I mean, just think of it. One, you're not chanting, and two, mirror words, when the kids are repeating you, you're talking anyways. You're talking all day anyways. So you're just actually, helping your students learn better because they're repeating what you say rather than you doing all the talking. And then in first grade, I trained my students within the first month to become the teachers. And after that, I literally just facilitate my classroom. And if I have a sub, my kids pretty much know what to do and they can tell that, I write it in my sub plans, but the kids can run the classroom in first grade. And
That's
so,
awesome.
that's my first thought whenever anybody says, I couldn't do this all day. Well, you don't. And you spend the first month or 2 training, but you do that anyways.
Right. You do that. That's true. You do. Everybody trains their kids a certain way to how they want their classroom to be ran,
Right.
right? This is just doing that same thing, just a little bit different.
It just looks different. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so what are the whole brain teaching basics? Like, how do you feel like so first of all, kind of answer that, like, what are the basics? And then how do you feel they impact student learning from like that human brain perspective? Because we know that it really does help the student's brain and get things to stick.
Right. So the whole brain teaching basics is where anybody should start. If you are going to do any part of whole brain teaching, start with the whole brain teaching basics. And the basics alone will transform at least 80 to 85% of your class. That's a rough estimate, obviously. But you always have your rascals and those kids that are on the forefront of your mind. But with whole brain teaching, we say, we're gonna focus on them, yes, but we're going to give you these strategies that's going to transform the rest of your class, most of your class first.
Hmm.
And so the whole brain teaching basics are a set of strategies that you can use in your classroom all day long to really engage the student's whole brain in absolutely everything that you do. Um, so it's like a cycle. There's four parts to the whole brain teaching basics, and it goes in a cycle. And this is how we teach and how we talk to our kids and how we do pretty much anything that we do in our classroom. Do you want me to talk about the four parts to the
Yeah, can you tell us what the cycle is? What does it start with? You engage, right?
Yeah, so it starts with our attention getter. So the first thing you need to do, obviously, is get your students' attention. And I know teachers have their own call and response. Um, so that's what it is. Our call and response, our version of call and response is class, and they say yes. Um,
Okay.
Now, the difference between that is that we have three expectations that go along with our class yes, because you want your whole class, you want 100% of your class's attention, right? I mean, if I get 50%, I'm not really cool with going on and only talking and teaching with 50% of my class. In the beginning of the year, yes, because that's just what it is. But after my kids are trained, I need 100% all the time. And so the three expectations that go along with class yes are that students stop what they're doing, turn to look at the teacher, and fold their hands. And with the littles, I teach this in micro steps. So I first teach that when they hear me say class, they're going to say yes and they're going to freeze.
Ah,
We go in micro step practice and we just practice it and we do it all the time. And with the older kids, obviously, you can introduce all three of those at one time and practice doing it. In whole brain teaching, we say we don't scold, we rehearse. So if your
okay.
students are not um, you know doing things to your expectation, instead of scolding, okay, I see we need a little practice, let's play a game and we're going to practice this. So it's a lot of practice. um, but I will say I get 100% of my students attention the whole year, because I front load this and we stop throughout the year to practice. So that's step one, is the attention getter. Once you get your students' attention, you need to keep it, right?
Yeah.
So you can get their attention, but then when you go on your rant or you go on, what, even if you go on your lesson, that we've all written these great lessons, right? That we think are like, oh my gosh, the kids are going to love this. And then you get into it and you're like, why isn't anybody paying attention to me? um, so we keep our students' attention with what we call our brain engager, which is mirror words. And this is my absolute 100% favorite whole brain teaching strategy. I could never teach without it because
Me either.
Yeah, right? It's too much. If I've tried, because actually I had a curriculum that was scripted recently, and
Oh,
yeah, and I tried, because I couldn't figure out, how to work whole brain in there, at first. So I tried, and it was a mini lesson where I had to talk for 10 minutes. Oh my goodness. Britt, that was like the worst. That was the worst.
I saw you were, I mean, because I follow you on Instagram and I love your Instagram, by the way. And it just, and the listeners will definitely, I'll get all that stuff for them on the show notes. But I could see from this year to last year, you were struggling more. And I was like, why is she struggling more? Because last year the kids were already at a certain point by then.
Mhm.
This makes so much more sense to me that you got a new curriculum and you were like,
Yes, and you know what? It is different also with new curriculum and each year with your students. So depending.
Right, because they're all different, right? You never know what crop of kids you're going to get and how they're going to react, right?
Exactly. Last year, second day of school, I had a student suspended,
Oh, wow.
for cutting another student with scissors. And so, I mean, you, it just depends on the kids that you get. Now, I never freak out when this happens in the beginning of the year because they don't know me yet. I don't know them. I know that with whole brain teaching, I can transform them. But yes, I had this new curriculum, so and I also wanted to be very transparent in what whole brain teaching looks like in the beginning of the year. I
I
want.
really liked that. It really did show people or teachers like it's not going to just be like magically like you're going to wave a wand and it's like, oh, and now my classroom all does, class yes, and they all have their hands folded. Like it was really, I think, vulnerable of you to show that this is really what it is for the first part.
Yes, and I really like I said, wanted to be intentional about doing that because it's not a magic wand, and the first 6 weeks are rough. Um, Exhausting. I had another kid who just wouldn't stay in the classroom, and like my feet were so tired because I'm like trying to get somebody to cover my classroom so I could or track him down, one or the other. It's just it's it's not pretty, and I really wanted to show that side of it so that people know this is what it looks like in the beginning, but this is what it can look like if you stick to it and you're consistent.
Right. And you can still teach. We can layer this on top of anything. But yes, we have to deal with also random teaching life things, right? That you
Right.
just like curveballs that are constantly thrown at teachers. Okay, so we've got class yes, which is your attention getter, and then brain engager, which is mirror words, which is just my favorite, which is really hard to kind of, I don't know, describe over a podcast, but could you try your best your best?
So mirror words is really, you say mirror words, the students say mirror words, and then they repeat everything that you're saying. So rather than sitting and listening, when they're sitting and listening to you, they're only using one little tiny part of their brain, which is Wernicke's area, which is responsible for listening. Um, so when we're listening to a lecture or you're listening to somebody speak, you're only using one little part of your brain. When they're using mirror words, you're engaging the motor cortex because they're doing the gestures with you. You're
Mm-hmm.
engaging many more parts of the brain. They're doing the gestures with you and they're repeating everything that you're saying. And that's our third step, actually, that goes into our third step, which is direct instruction. So you get their attention, you use the brain engager mirror words, and then you teach them something. So you're going to teach them something. And then when you're done with the mirror words, you're done saying your part, they've repeated all of it. Then we get to our fourth part, which is collaborative learning. You clap 2 times and say teach. The kids clap 2 times and say okay, and they turn and they teach their neighbor everything that you just taught them. And then you call them back. Yeah, and then you call them back with class yes. Um, and when they're doing their teach okay, you're walking around and it's like the best form of formative assessment ever because you can clearly see who's got it, who doesn't, who's looking around the classroom like, what are we saying? What is this? Um, and then you call them back with class yes, and you either move on or you do it again if
So when you're walking around for Teach OK, they're continuously doing it, right? There's no, because you break up. What I like so much too about whole brain teaching and this cycle is your lessons are broken up into chunks in such a way that they are able to do something almost right. Like you teach something, and then they do something, and then you teach something, and then you call them back, and it's so that's what I really love about it. It keeps them engaged because we know, especially littles, they can't keep their attention for very long. So when they continuously do it, right? Like they don't just get to run through it one time because otherwise you might not get to that section of the class to formatively assess, right? So they do it until you call them back.
Until you call them back. And thank you, because that's an important part. So yes, your students are repeating, and you have to teach that. Because otherwise they're just going to say it one time and then they're going to look at you. No, no, you're going to keep teaching. And with the older kids, this is their chance to paraphrase. You want them to summarize. What did you just
Oh, that's
talk about?
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we even do that with the little kids, but when we're teaching core knowledge, and even with the older kids, when you're teaching core knowledge, like there's just something that they need to know. Like my kids just need to know that a noun is a person, place, or thing. I mean, there's not critical thinking. There's no critical thinking yet. So they're just repeating that, and yeah, they're all saying it on the same at the same time. So that's where people see videos and think that, oh, it's robotic repetition. Um, but then we get into examples of people who are nouns, and then I'm going to clap 2 times and say teach, and you're going to teach your neighbors many examples of nouns, people who are nouns that you can think of. And then they're going to keep going until I call them back with class yes, completing that cycle. So that's why we call it a cycle.
I love the cycle and I love that it's not necessarily repeating all the time. It's now let's give me an example, give me a real world example. And that's really pulling a lot out of their brain, right? They're trying to transfer their knowledge to what they just learned into what they know about the world, which is what we want them to do.
Right. And with the older kids, you might just be giving a lesson on metamorphosis first, for example, and you might just kind of give them an overview of it with mere words. And then you might say, now turn and tell your neighbor everything you learned about metamorphosis so far. Clap 2 times, say teach. They're going to clap 2 times, say okay. And then they're going to be paraphrasing. They're not repeating word for word everything that you just said. They're paraphrasing to their neighbor, which is great critical thinking in the beginning, especially when they're just learning about a topic.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Okay. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you for explaining that. So yeah, and they can look at that on the website, right? It's just wholebrainteaching.com. And then they just look for basics. So if they're like, they just want to start, that's where you say, just start with that, right?
Definitely start with the basics. And yes, so you go to wholebrainteaching.com. The first step you'll see is WBT basics. Click on that and then take it step by step. So I do want to say that I was very, very slow at implementing this. Um, and some people want to jump all in and do everything, but I did not. And so if you don't feel like you're ready to do all of it at once, please don't. I did just class yes for a whole month before I even was comfortable trying mirror words. It's brand new, to a lot of people. And for me, when I first learned about it, nobody that I could find, and there was no Facebook groups, there was no website, there was nothing, and nobody that I knew was actually using whole brain teaching. So I just was reading the book,
Yep.
and it's it's very different, and you're like, oh my gosh, these kids are gonna look at me like I'm so crazy, but
Yep.
I would just go into the classroom. I would say, you know what, guys, yesterday we played this game, and now we're gonna try this new game. Okay, I'm gonna do this, and um, one of my aha moments that I had was I was practicing mirror words with the kids, and I just wanted them. Oh no, I was teaching teach okay. And so I just wanted them to practice turning and teaching it to their neighbor. So I just did mirror words and I said, I see a dog. And then I clapped 2 times and said, teach. And they clapped 2 times and said, okay. But then they turned and the whole class just sat there and they didn't know what to say. So that to me was one of my aha moments. Like, if they don't even remember what I just said, I see a dog, then they're not remembering my cool lesson where I'm doing all the talking and only one little part of their brain is being engaged. And so that was one of my aha moments where I realized that, whole brain teaching really works, but it's a process because it's new to us and it's new to the kids. And they are going to look
Yeah.
at you. And, even in first grade, I get looks like this lady is nuts. I am not even about to do this, and they're looking at me and I just ignore that and go with the ones, focus on the ones who are doing it with you. Um,
Yep.
and the other ones will come around because we make it like a game. It's fun. But I just want to say that so that listeners know it's okay if you feel weird at first, and it's okay if you're nervous at first, to just go slow. And I was very, very slow at implementing whole brain teaching. And I did mirror words for like 2 weeks. And then I finally was like, okay, let me try teach okay. So just the basics alone took me about 2 months to even implement. And then I was tweaking things after that. Um,
I
so,
really love that you said that because I do feel like people want to jump in and then they get like overwhelmed and they want to pump the brakes and then the kids are like, wait, but we were doing, and it just gets too
yes,
messy, and I just feel like if they go slow and then it's not like you're cheerleading or anything. Like they can make it their own personality with it. Like I've always tried to say, I'm very energetic. I'm just an energetic person. So I think to a lot of other teachers, when they would see me do it, it would be like, I couldn't do that, or I don't know how you do that. And you must have so much energy. And I'm like, well, I had energy anyways. this is just this is like giving my energy focus. Actually, it's not so random. But I think I don't think that you have to be loud or chant. Like you said, you can really go slow and make it your own as long as you follow that cycle.
for sure. This is something we say at live conferences all the time. And I get criticized a lot online. People are mean, and they're
Oh yeah.
always talking about how loud I am. Why do you have to yell? Why do you? And I'm just loud. I am a loud person. I've always been loud. And, that's just what works for me in my classroom. And if you have, they always ask, if you have a student sensitive to noise, then we adjust for that. You can whisper. And then we have Nancy Stoltenberg. She's the director of Whole Brain Teaching Certification. She's so soft spoken, and she's
Right. She is. Yes.
she is retired now, but you can still find some of her old videos on on our YouTube channel.
On YouTube.
Yes,
Yep. I've seen her and
yes.
she is so soft. So I love her as an example of a soft spoken one for sure. They should look her up. What can you say her name again?
Yes, Nancy Stoltenberg, but you can find her on you can find her on the website. If you go to About Us, all of our, everybody's listed there, but on YouTube,
Perfect.
/Chris Biffle, that's our YouTube channel. And, yeah, so she's more slow and calm and reserved, and she's not like, okay, like,
Yeah,
like,
you and I are like,
mhm.
let's do this thing. And I just feel like there's other teachers looking at me. I train teachers now and they're like, she needs to take a breath. Like,
Yeah. Yes. And that's the thing is, we're all different, and do it.
yeah,
There's no whole brain teaching police. So do it how, the way that works best for you and your students in your classroom. And even if you go to our YouTube channel, Andre Deshotel, he's a executive board member in middle school. And then we have Sarah Metter. She's also in middle school, and both of them teach differently as well. Andre is on 10 all the time. I love watching him, but I mean, I could never keep up that energy that he has. Um,
right. And I've seen videos of him and more than so than I was. I
yes,
was like, wow,
yes,
he's got it going on.
but his
Um,
kids are so engaged in it. I mean, I love showing that at conferences just so people know I teach first grade, yes, but this works, and this was developed when Coach was a college professor. So he developed this teaching college students, and we use
right.
teaching adults, how to use it in our conferences. So it really works for all ages.
Yeah, and you just make it work with your teaching style and obviously like Andre has his own style in general as a person and that totally is portrayed through his classroom and then the way he just teaches and uses whole brain teaching. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, so we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but many teachers say, and you and I both have been criticized for this, there's no way I could teach like that all day, or my students are older, that they would never do mirror words, or I tried the super improver. It was too much for me to keep up with everything else on my plate. Like, how do you respond to the teachers as someone who uses it daily? Like, what is some advice you could provide for them? So I think the first thing you said was, whoa, pump the brakes, go slow. And we can say, make it your own, right? It doesn't have to be that. But is there other pieces of advice that you think would help people that are just, they look at this and they just think, oh, it's just one more thing for me to do. I don't know if I can handle it.
For sure. So first, let me remind everybody about my experience in the priority school.
Right.
And we had so much on our plate that year. And like I said, they would call it a sub for us for like a morning or an afternoon. So we could go and plan and write curriculum. I mean, it was it was really wild and working those long hours, and there was just we had so much on our plate. We were doing so much. Oh, and then we had a new conference, parent teacher conferences. We were learning about APTT, academic parent teacher teams. There was just a ton, and that's the year that I learned about whole brain teaching. And so, what I first want to say is that whole brain teaching will change your life and it will change your kids' lives. And it's worth it to put in a little time, to read the book or watch a video on the website each night if you can, or on your planning period if you can. But there is a lot. And, now we have our Facebook groups. And I think sometimes people feel pressured to keep up with what's going on in the Facebook groups. And so, one thing I do want listeners to know is please don't put that pressure on yourself. I want everybody to know that even us on the executive board do not use all the components of whole brain teaching. We do use the big seven, which are on the website, but then there's all kinds of new stuff going on all the time. And it's almost impossible to do everything. Most of what you will see are strategies for you to keep in your back pocket should you need them. Um,
See, I like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So overall, please just don't. Yeah, the super improver. If you're doing the super improver, and it seems like it's too much, then put it to the side for now. But I will tell you that when you get comfortable using the basics all day, and you're like, okay, I'm ready for something else. Super improver is a great thing to add. But what I do want to say is put some of this responsibility on your students. So, like with the super improver, I don't always have time to go. I'm not going to stop what I'm doing and go give out stars. That's not happening. I will literally tell my students, you know what, remind me to give you that star before we go to lunch. And they will. And if they don't, then you know what? Oh, well, they missed a star, but I've never had a student forget. And so I put a lot of responsibility on my students. Take some of that off of your plate and put it on your students. And so another thing I want to remind people, whole brain teaching is a remedy. It's not a band-aid. So I think you touched on this, Britt, in the beginning, and you said we talked about that it's not a quick fix. I spend the first 6 weeks, and I've been doing this for 8 years, and training people on it, and I still spend the first 6 to 8 weeks training my kids. Um,
Okay. And I love that. Can you say that one more time? It is a remedy.
Not a band-aid. Yes, and so if you're looking for a super quick fix, I mean, this is quick compared to other things, but consistency is key. So, I had a teacher that in a school that I used to work at, and she had tried scoreboard, and then she would stop, and then she would start, and then she would stop, and then she would start, and her kids were kind of all over the school running around. And one time, one of the kids came and visited my classroom, and I asked, I was using scoreboard, and he said, "Yeah, we used to do that. I don't know why my teacher doesn't do that anymore. That was a really fun game. I liked playing that." And you could just see like he liked it, but she felt like it wasn't working. It's not working well enough. It's not. Um, I don't know. So it's what I'm trying to say is just you have to keep up with it, and it's not going to look perfect right away. But consistency is key.
Okay. And I really like that you said, and first of all, scoreboard's amazing. So we might need to have a whole other podcast but there's so much to unpack.
I
But
know.
I just wanted them to get a taste of it going into 2021 because we've just been so all over the place we've been face-to-face, hybrid, and remote. So I'm just like,
Yes.
but it works in everything. So we can get to that in a little bit too.
Yeah.
It really does work in all models. But I like that you said, would you prefer to repeat directions and scold all day or just engage your kids? Like, I love that line.
That's where I was just going to go to because I wanted to make sure that was heard because I know that it can seem overwhelming. I do understand that. And that's why my big thing is I want to just say go as slow as you need to. But here's the thing, right? We're either going to spend the whole year scolding, repeating ourselves, frustrated, tired, or we can spend the first 2 months doing this. And yes, we're going to be repeating ourselves. We're going to be tired. We're going to be frustrated. But then after that, your kids are trained. And I train my kids to teach. I train my kids in the whole brain teaching basics cycle. So they get up, they say class, they say mirror words, they teach, and they say teach okay, and they walk around the room and actually check for understanding. And they call class, and then they do the scoreboard. They're literally in charge of everything. So I'm like sitting back and chilling, doing whatever I want. I'm drinking hot coffee. I'm
You're
not.
like, the kids run this now. I don't have to do much at all. I know, right?
Yeah, I
That would
mean, basically, I have gotten laminating done. When the kids are teaching each other, I have been standing there at my laminator, laminating things, but I'm still there. But I am the facilitator, and I think that's the beauty of it. It sounds funny, like she's just standing there laminating, doing nothing. But the kids they literally take over, and
well, you've given them some direct instruction and then they just go.
they do it, and they're excited to do it. And actually, what I've seen is the sooner I do this, where I put the kids in charge, the sooner my beloved rascals um, change their behavior.
Yeah. They start to get more buy-in for sure.
Yeah.
Because now they're part of the team, kind of. You have to take some responsibility now and go teach and make sure the students are knowing what's going on for sure.
And most of the time, your beloved rascals are leaders anyways. They're just to leading, or they want attention. But they're just used to doing it in a negative way. So this actually gives them the opportunity to get their attention because they're teaching the class and then also leading. But it just turns it into a positive thing.
Okay, so I used only the cycle and the scoreboard. And then that was it. And then the scoreboard, and then I kind of modified it into my own little super improver, sort of, kind of, because I had them in teams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I did a little bit of a modification and that worked for me.
Yeah.
But everybody would always ask me, like, how do you get them to intrinsically do this? Like, how are they intrinsically motivated to just do it anyways? And I have just seen it as a whole empower and energize kids. So, and like I said, we may need a second episode for this.
Yeah.
But how do you think it helps you as an educator? And we've kind of already touched about this, but like feedback, formative assessment, participation, management. Like, I always get a lot of questions in my classes that I teach when I train teachers. They want the magic management pill. Like they really do. They're like, what? Like, give me that thing that's going to help me with my classroom management and engagement. And I always say you need to look up whole brain teaching.
Yep.
And that's my kind of go-to. And they're just like, what's that? And so that's why I reached out to you. And I always give like you and Andre and Coach, like all of your like follow all these people, watch some of their stuff. Like, I give the website out. But I think as an expert, somebody that does it every day, like, what does your day look like? Like, and then like, how do you feel like it helps you with all of those things?
Okay, so
I know that's like a really loaded question. I'm so sorry.
no, that's okay. So I will say that in a full classroom, like if I was in person in a full classroom and even online, you're using these things all day, every day. They just become part of what you do. So there's already things that you do already. Some teachers use stickers or charts, or hopefully not clip charts anymore, but you always have something, right? So you're just actually turning it into this. So you're already doing something. You're just going to modify it. You're just going to change it. And so I know that's sometimes it's the hardest part for people, right?
It's just changing. Yeah, because I did so mine was modeled after the Hogwarts, wow, I can't speak now. Hogwarts House Cup. So each table was like their own house, and then they would make their own house shield, and then they would put clothespins on the shield based on the scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had to modify it basically.
Right.
But like, I didn't have to give out like there's teachers still giving out like candy and like prize boxes and I'm just like, they don't need that extrinsic, they were motivated to do well in rigorous activities, you know what I mean, during class because of scoreboard and just the cycle of whole brain teaching and then getting that clothespin to their shield. So like really, but I had to take it slow, and like I really only did class yes and mirror words for a long time with my high schoolers, and then as soon as I did teach okay, it almost like I was like, why did they wait so long to do it? Because they started to do what you said. They started to just like paraphrase, or here's what she just said, or and with their big gestures and stuff like that. But I did do it kind of really slow because I was trying to figure out how to make it work with like what I was already doing, and I think that's what's hard.
And I think that's what stops a lot of people, but don't not do it just because if you like what you're doing, just, learn a little bit more about the scoreboard and the super improver. The scoreboard is our class motivator. The super improver is our individual motivator. Really all that the kids ever get is stars, and they get to level up. And dice rolls have actually changed my life.
Um, the dice roll makes me so happy.
I'm telling you, I had a rascal last year. I started using the dice for everything. So if you improve in writing right now, um, you can earn a dice roll. And so he hated writing. And I don't even know, he wasn't even at his spot. He was somewhere else around the room, which was kind of typical at that time of the year. As soon as I said dice roll, the next thing I know, I turned around and he's already writing. He was already writing before anybody else was even writing because I said dice roll. And that's what coach does. He really turns your classroom into a live video game. And what do kids get when they level up in a video game? They don't get a sticker. They don't get candy. They get to go to the next level. They get
Right.
nothing extrinsic at all. And that's what we do in whole brain teaching. We really make your classroom that's coach's whole goal, is make your classroom like a live video game. And it works. It really works.
Right, because kids are used to that, and they're used to even the phrasing like level up, right?
Yes. And
I mean,
unlock.
they unlock, yeah, unlock this or level up. Like I think they think that just like triggers in their mind some, fun that they have outside of the classroom. So why don't we just bring it into the inside of the classroom? Okay. All right. So last question I have for you.
Hmm.
And I love the quote from the site that says, if scolding worked, we would have no problems.
Yes.
I mean, and that's so true. I mean, and then we've all had rascals. Everybody's had every teacher listening to this right now can picture several, I'm sure, in their head, of those beloved rascals, is like you guys call them, that just are not on task or whatever. They're just or throwing things, or just sometimes they're very dangerous. But you're like, oh my gosh, there's those kids in those classrooms. How does whole brain teaching really assist those types of kids? Like, and you just gave me a perfect example of the dice roll, but like, do you have any other examples from back when you were priority school, or even currently, where you've had that beloved rascal and you're like, you've seen them transform?
Oh my gosh, I could go on and on with stories of transformation with beloved rascals, but I'll just give you one example. Actually, one of my rascals that actually took the longest. So it was my first year at a new school, and I was being observed this one day, and my rascal would often do this and crawl around and meow like a cat,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
yeah, and
I understand.
and he would actually claw at the other kid's legs. Um, and the hardest thing for me was if I would try to talk to him, because I know that making building a relationship with him is going to be the key here. But anytime I tried to talk to him, he would just meow at me or make some weird noise, and he would not have a conversation with me. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna, this is never gonna work. And it took me until after Christmas. But after Christmas, he finally came around and did a complete 180. And I even had teachers um, thinking that he was put on meds because a lot of teachers felt like that he should. He was one of the kids that the whole school knows that I was He's everybody knows him. He would run around the school. Everybody knew him from kindergarten. Even coming in, I heard about him before I even saw him.
Mm.
um, those kinds of
Yep.
kids. And whenever a teacher warns me about a kid, I'm super excited. I want that kid because I know that I can totally transform them. But I was actually losing a little bit of faith with this one. It's never really taken me that long. But after Christmas, like I said, he did a complete 180. And they thought he was on medicine. They thought that he actually got put on medicine. And I started telling people, yeah, the whole brain teaching medicine. That's what it is.
Yep, that's what it is. Yep. I love that though, because I hate, and you're right. They either want attention and love, right? Or they are leaders and they're like, let's go. Like you know what I mean? And they just need someone to say, you're not a bad kid, or give them an opportunity to demonstrate that they're not. Like, they have to build that trust up with them, and you've got to be credible enough. They have to see you as credible enough to be the kid they want to be.
Right. And everybody thought that he had ADHD, whatever else. But mom refused to put him on meds, which I was so happy about because I, I didn't see that either. I just saw what you were just talking about. And what actually worked for us was the bullseye game. But that's another thing. Like I said, with whole brain teaching, there's so many things that you keep in your back pocket. So when I had exhausted all of my other resources, I finally, after Christmas, brought out the bullseye game. And that's what actually ended up working. And last year he was in fourth grade and he would still come and take breaks in my classroom. And
Oh, see,
so,
because you're the one that broke it. You're the one that made him feel like he could be successful in school.
and it's all thanks to whole brain teaching. I really don't think that I could have had that transformation with him or the many others that I could sit here and tell you stories for hours. Um, Without whole brain teaching, there's no way. I know that I wouldn't have known what to do, or I would have given up. It gets frustrating.
It does. Well, especially I'm sure with first grade little ones when they're they love to pretend and they're just not quite sure how to be a student yet. I mean, kindergarten too, kindergarten first, those are hard ages. So I could imagine that. I mean, I had high school kids that would literally like take their chair and like go and put it up and down on their head in the back of the classroom. And you're like, this is a giant kid that could really hurt me or someone else. Like, so just getting them to like feel like, okay, she's credible. She doesn't think I'm a bad kid. Like, and just treating them like, I love that they're called beloved rascals. Like, we have to give them love and compassion and just, make sure that they understand we're here for them. And I think they do come around. I mean, even I've had kids come back to me and be like, oh my gosh, when I was a freshman in your class, like they're juniors now and they're like, I don't know what I was doing, but thank you so much for hanging in there, and helping me get through it. So, okay, really quick, we only have so much time left because I want to get through it in an hour, but I love the You're Still Cool and the 10-figure woo, because right now we are in hybrid. So like some of them are virtual some days and some of them are face to face. And then who knows when we'll go back virtually. But I think those two things really create a classroom community that is essential. Even before COVID, I think those two things create such a positive reinforcement for students to students. How long do you you said it takes 6 weeks to even get them through the cycle of whole brain teaching. How long does it take for them to like really like, do they feel like it's weird saying it to each other, or like do they like it? I guess is what I'm asking you.
Yes. And so let me just clarify. For me in first grade, it takes at least 6 to 8 weeks usually. With the older kids, you could probably go a little bit faster. And then it depends on your class. But when the kids are learning how to teach one another, when they're learning the cycle, get yourself familiar with the cycle first, then teach it to your kids. And
Go slow.
while you're learning and while they're learning, you always are using a 10-finger woo and a You're Still Cool. And I will tell you, in every single conference and in every single classroom, I am the first one to acknowledge making a mistake. I always make a mistake.
Me too.
Not even on purpose. I just do. I always say I'm the first one. I messed up. Like, oh my gosh, can you guys please tell me? Mrs. Martin to say, Mrs. Martin, you're still cool. And virtually, we have a gesture for it. But I always model it first so that they know, like, and I'll just say, oh my gosh, you guys, you know what? I said this, but this is what I really meant. Can you please tell me you're still cool? Because it's okay to make a mistake. And that's kind of how I present it to the kids. Like, we all make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. So you're going to be telling me a lot this year, you're still cool. Um, and I mean, that's how I talk to my first graders. With the older kids, you're just going to say, you know what, this is part of life. However you talk to your kids. So
Right, right.
do what works for you. But it's crucial to let them know that it's okay to make mistakes. I think there's like this whole thing, even especially on social media with teachers lately. It's like we're held to the standard, like we have to be so perfect. And it's
Oh, yeah.
just not reality. So you're still cool. And then whenever I start the 10 finger woo, whenever a student teaches. So my first kid who stands up to teach, I'm literally talking them through it. I'm saying, okay, say class, class. And they're going to say class, class. I'm like telling them what to say, just, to teach them how to do it. Um,
Right. You have to rehearse. You have to practice.
you
Yeah.
have to practice. And so after they have done it, that takes a lot of courage to get up there and do it. We give them a big 10 finger woo. And when you get a 10 finger woo, you receive it with a thank you. And then we say you're welcome, which is part of our character education piece, is always saying please and thank you, you're welcome, things like that. So,
Yeah, and I love that there's movements that go with that. So they can look online too and find
yes.
the gestures that go with all of the please, the thank you, the 10 finger woo, the you're still cool. Okay, so I really like that you have them tell you first that you're still cool when you make mistakes, and then it kind of starts to become a culture thing.
And then they do it without me saying anything ever. I'll make a mistake and I won't even realize it really, and I'll just like keep going. And the kids will say, you're still cool, Mrs. Martin. And they do it with each other without me even saying it. They'll do it before I can even say it sometimes. And the same with the 10 finger woo. They'll just get used to it and they'll do it on their own, which is so awesome to see.
Well, and I think, like even with the older kids, well, all kids, there's been this like I don't know if it was I don't know if it was recently, but like I felt like my last few years of teaching, I would tell my students like failure is our best friend.
Yeah,
Like if you don't fail or if you don't make a mistake, like I don't have opportunities to give you learning and feedback. I don't have opportunities to celebrate then when we do get it right. So like it's okay to fail, it's okay to make a mistake. So we would always say something like, like it's okay to fail or like that's our best friend or something like that. So like I just creating that culture of you're still cool is really creating that culture of failure is okay. Like we've got to, nobody's perfect the first time doing something. And people are human and make mistakes all the time. And we learn from them and grow. And that's how we learn. That's part of teaching and learning.
exactly.
Okay, I love that. Okay, thank you so much for coming on with me today. I'm like a little bit fangirling. I'm not gonna lie because I've followed you on social media now for like 2 years.
Oh my goodness, you're so funny.
And so when I reached out, I was like, I don't know if she's gonna do this, but I really want like an expert to talk about it because even though I've used it, I don't feel like I'm an expert in it. And I know there's so much interest in it for our school district. So I so appreciate you coming on and talking with me. It's like, I'm so excited.
Well, thank you for reaching out. I mean, I could talk about whole brain teaching all day. I really miss doing our live conferences. It's just a passion, because I've just seen it change my kids' lives, and so anywhere I can share it, I am happy to. So thank you for reaching out.
Okay. And also, if listeners want to learn more from you, they can find you online because I stalk you online. So everybody else can too. So where can they find you online?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram at Whole Brain with Heidi, or if you go to the website wholebrainteaching.com, you can find all of our social media channels right there on the main page. Um,
Okay. So then you guys have Facebook groups, which I feel like a lot of people do gravitate towards because it's like a nice community. But like you said, don't get intimidated. Do what you can, right?
yes, I don't go on Facebook as much anymore. I try to pop into the groups just to kind of help answer some questions when I can. But when I do go in, I do see, that's where coach spends a lot of his time, and coach's brain just never stops. So he is always coming up with new ideas. And there's a lot of people talking about, if you're new to whole brain teaching and you go into the Facebook groups, you might say, what in the world are they talking about? There's a lot of people talking about the newest things. And so if you do join a Facebook group, it's a great place to ask questions. But please don't feel, like keeping up with the Joneses in there. It's just going to be way too overwhelming.
Way too overwhelming. And then you guys now have a podcast available.
We do. I'm so excited. I'm the social media director for Whole Brain Teaching, and one of my goals was to get a podcast, but I don't know anything about these things. And so one of our staff members, platinum certified, Laura Forehand, her husband has a podcast. So I said, well, you're it. You are going to do it. So her and Rhonda, another platinum certified instructor, have a podcast now. And so
Is it just called Whole Brain Teaching Podcast, or what's it called?
yes, it's just called Whole Brain Teaching podcast. And it was just available on Podbean, but now we have it on recently iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Addict, Google Podcasts, and Podbean. So we're working.
Oh yeah, you got your distributor working. You sound like me. I do a lot of the social media for our department too, and then I just was like, hey, I'm gonna just do a podcast because I feel like right now teachers are getting a lot of PD through podcast listening. So I think we should do a podcast, and they just all looked at me like, sure, go for it. And I was like, I had to learn like how to do editing and ask questions and get guests. And I was like, what did I get myself into? But it has actually been a total joy. So it really has been super fun. But yeah, definitely. That's awesome. I can't wait to listen. I mean, I wrote it down. I'm going to look for it on iTunes and definitely get going on that. Cause I love this. I love whole brain teaching. It is a passion of mine as a teacher. And so as an instructional specialist, I want to bring it to them. I want to bring it to all the teachers because I just feel like it does transform your classroom.
It really does. And they're going through on the podcast, they're literally going through the website piece by piece. So
Oh, see, that's awesome. So if they're like just diving in and they're getting excited about it from this episode, they can just sign up for that and just kind of work through it with the podcasters.
yes, if they'd rather listen to the podcast than actually go through the website, that is exactly how they're doing. So they're only on the second step, which is Super Improver, because they're really going into detail so that you get everything, that you can out of each episode. So if podcast is your thing, definitely, check that out. But also, Britt, I was going to ask you if you've seen the whole brain teaching certification part of our website.
I have. So I am working on, I'm only, what's the lowest? I think I'm bronze. Yes, so I'm bronze. But I want to get up further. It's time. I'm trying to get my national board certification this year as well.
Oh yeah, that's a lot. But I did want to put that out there for anybody listening because, I mean, you think about certification, oh my gosh, what do I have to do? It's completely free. And then bronze is really, if you're just jumping into whole brain teaching, bronze is really going to help you learn those basics. It's just,
Yeah, like that's what I feel like. I feel good in the basics. It's just then when I look at some of the new stuff, I'm like, oh, and I didn't do that. And I don't really have a lot of opportunities to try it because I'm teaching other content or whatever the principals are having me out to do. So I'm just like, well, I'm here, I'm doing this. So I'm glad to have you on to do the basics and stuff. But yeah, there's a certification area and it's good. I mean, it's all online classes and they're free. So, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's free. And if you get bronze certified, it doesn't mean anything. Like you can't, train people or do anything like that. It's really just part of your journey in learning more about whole brain teaching. So that bronze, if you're new and you're looking into the basics, once you start looking at the basics, start looking into that bronze certification because that's really just like I said, it's just going to help you dive deeper into the basics and what whole brain teaching is all about.
Well, and I feel like when I did it, it solidified my learning.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Heidi. I appreciate it. And if ever I can do anything for you, let me know, because I like I said, I am fangirling a little bit because I have been stalking you on Instagram for 2 years.
Oh my goodness, you are so funny. No,
You are wonderful, and what you do for your kids is wonderful, and I love watching you teach. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And again, thank you for reaching out. I could talk about whole brain teaching all day. So.
I know. We're over our hour, but only by like 2 minutes. So I feel like we did okay.
Okay, good.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Learning Unlocked and finding out more about whole brain teaching. If you have listened today as a GPS educator, you can receive PD recertification credit by visiting our Employee Hub page and navigating to Professional Growth and then Digital PD Courses. Just a reminder that we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GPS Prof Growth. That's at GPS PROF GROWTH. For more information or resources from this episode, please visit our website at learningunlocked.libsyn.com/website. We are distributed by Libsyn to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Audible, and Amazon Music. Episodes are also available on our PGD YouTube channel under playlists. Our intro and audio music are licensed from Melody Loops. Thanks again, keyholders. Keep unlocking curiosity, creativity, and innovation with your students. Stay kind and courageous, and I'll see you next time.